As we're all aware, a smash hit video game can put a company on the map. If it was a monster of a release as well, then it might even afford a dev team to coast on that license for years, decades even. Hell, if it was a truly exceptional title, it might even spawn a whole new way of playing video games, carving itself into the literal face of the industry. Now, every development team hopes and dreams of this becoming a reality for them, and will see them slaving away for years to perfect their ideas. So just imagine how much of a punch in the gut it must be to see licenses shift hands and another development team release a title under your old franchise which scores that 1 in a million hit. Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today, and by we, I mean that I've roped in WhatCulture's own 1 in a million Josh Brown to help me with this list. So, I'm Jules.
And I'm Josh
From WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 awesome video game sequels not made by their original developers.
Number 8, Prey. Okay, so this one is more of a reboot than a sequel, but it still bears the Prey name, so it absolutely counts, Jules.
Okay, fine, easy.
While plenty of people, myself included, remain devastated that Human Head's vision of a bounty hunter-focused Prey 2 wasn't realised, there's no denying that Arkane Studios put a pretty damn good spin on the franchise with its soft reboot 2 years ago. More an RPG sim than a shooter, Arkane threw players into an alien-infested space station and left them to their own devices to figure out how to progress. Lots of titles claim to give the player unprecedented freedom, but few actually do it, and Prey is thankfully in that small handful. If you can think up a solution to a problem, the game has probably already accounted for it, and even if it hasn't, it won't stop you from realising it with the tools at your disposal. Throw in a twisty sci-fi plot, a great setting, and inspired level design, and Prey is one of the best sci-fi games of the generation, even if it is more of a spiritual successor to System Shock than it is a sequel to the original Prey.
Number 7, Arkham Origins. Now, I must have missed the message somewhere along the line because I do not understand the issues with people hating on this game. I mean, sure, it's not the best game in the series, that for me falls to Arkham City, but it's arguably got more original content and less horrible gimmick work than that shown in Arkham Knight and its bollocks backcar shoehorning. Taking up the reins for Origins was Warner Bros. Montreal, who were hired in order to pump out a sequel/prequel to Arkham City in a shorter time frame than Rocksteady could. It was a decision that was not met well with the public, who feared a drop in quality. Luckily, Origins is not only a remarkably solid effort by the team, but it's one that decided not to break the mold in terms of gameplay and instead focus more on the relationship between Batman and his adversaries. The Joker, being the central antagonist, again was a little bit of a tease for some, but this gave such a great analysis of their rivalry, allowing the player to experience just how close Batman almost came to his end early on in his career at the hands of the Clown Prince of Crime. Because of this, the later games carry an even greater weight, although Hamill was missed more than a little from this role.
Number 6, Far Cry 2. Far Cry 2 isn't only a great game, but it might be the best, or at least the most cohesive entry in the entire franchise. Opting for a grounded approach to open-world anarchy, the entire sequel was about cause and effect, with a constantly shifting balance between action and reaction that made combat so intense. Not only did you have to account for the actual enemies, but the elements as well, as the hostile climate would result in guns jamming, while the flammable shrubbery could create a circle of fire if your grenade went off at just the wrong angle.
You know something about a burning bush or two, don't you, Josh?
Get out of here! There was a sense of unpredictability inherent to the game, and while not everybody liked that lack of control, every system and mechanic was built around it, and it made for a singular, unique experience. Of course, the game was developed by Ubisoft, and it couldn't have been more different to the original Far Cry and its spin-offs, which were crafted by Crytek. Though the broad strokes of an open world and exotic location were present, everything from the story to the gameplay to the supernatural focus which began to seep in is completely different in those originals. Far Cry shifted gears, and it was absolutely for the best, no matter whether you think 2, 3, or even 5 is the best.
Number 5, Crash Twinsanity. Now, I'm something of a purist when it comes to Crash Bandicoot games, as I truly believe that the Naughty Dog saga as a platforming trilogy and exceptional kart racer are phenomenal titles which consistently improved on their core message of over-the-top and challenging platforming. Therefore, it is with an upturned nose and a huge amount of skepticism that I approach the other Crash sequels. Wrath of the Cortex was garbage, with load times longer than a stint in prison. Mind Over Mutant made me wish for an aneurysm, and the less said about Crash Boom Bang, the better. However, there were a fair few that spun with style. Crash Nitro Kart was a formidable return, but the best of the rest has to be Crash Twinsanity. I mean, come on, this game was much like your mum's favourite meal, the absolute dog's bollocks. And yes, that is my one per list. Not only was the soundtrack an a cappella masterpiece, but the gameplay was completely off the wall. Sometimes you'd be controlling Crash and Cortex as they fight, sometimes you'd be platforming in ways reminiscent of the good old times, and in other areas, well, you'd be watching Cortex dress up like Coco, and I really didn't need to see that image. In short, this was a game that didn't try to emulate the past, but build on it for the future. It's a shame, therefore, that things went a little bit off the rails again, but Twinsanity stands proud as being a lot of Bandicoot for your buck.
Number 4, Bioshock 2. Jules,
Alright.
what's your favourite Bioshock game?
Probably Bioshock 1.
What if I told you Bioshock 2 is better?
You heathen! Burn him! Burn him in a stake!
Look, I'd
Stab him!
Alright, okay, that is ridiculous. I probably would agree, but I do want to say that Bioshock 2 gets way too much flack. While yes, it might not have the tightness of the original seminal storytelling, or even the ability to feel as fresh considering it takes place in a now familiar environment, it's still a damn good game and improves on some elements of Irrational Games' first outing. With development taken over by 2K Marin, the focus was on expanding a part of the original that fell short, the combat. Unlike the linear corridors of that title, Bioshock 2 opens things up, introducing better, weightier gunplay, larger combat spaces, and making action more freeform. Here you had open areas to explore, which lent itself to considered combat, as you had a chance to choose how you tackle encounters beforehand, rather than simply reacting to things the game threw at you. The plot, while not as sharp, is darker and more apocalyptic than the original as well. And that's not even taking into account the spectacular DLC that tells one of the best stories in the entire franchise.
Preach it, brother!
There he is. Once you remove the expectations of it being as surprising as the first, you're left with an amazing sequel that you might have slept on purely because it wasn't made by the original creators.
What we should really be saying is, congratulations, Bioshock! You got a son! Number 3, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. I know a lot of you might not be thinking that this game can actually be considered a sequel, but you know what? Kojima himself declared it to be canon, and because it wasn't completely handled by the original dev team that worked on the main MGS entries, definitely means it counts for this list. And I am so glad I get to talk about this game again, because Revengeance is quite possibly the most Platinum Games game ever made. It's over the top, full to the brim with cheese, but most importantly, it's a thing of visual beauty and action spectacle that is utterly outstanding. Now, taking control of everyone's least favourite Metal Gear hero, now complete with cybernetic augmentations, Raiden slashes through mechs, foes and fruit alike with a sword in the game that never slows down. It's basically an inversion of the Metal Gear formula, and you won't find me complaining one jot, as it was a breath of fresh air to the old sneak and scowl of before. Now, don't get me wrong, both sides of the coin are equally mint, but here, for the first time ever, I couldn't wait to see what insane boss fights and catchphrases were going to be screamed at me next.
Number 2, Max Payne 3. Remedy made a name for themselves with the original Max Payne games, with their moody graphic novel-inspired art and solid slow-mo shooting revolutionizing third-person action games. However, Remedy moved on, and not one to leave an IP languishing, publisher Rockstar took the game in-house for the controversial third outing, which shaved Max's head and took him out of the perpetually nighttime streets of New Jersey for the bright, wide-open spaces of Brazil. Once everyone made peace with the change in focus, though, it became clear that Max Payne 3 was going to be one of the most detailed third-person shooters ever. The stickler for the small things that Rockstar is meant that the sequel was essentially tech porn for anyone who enjoys seeing weighty, realistically animated combat mechanics in action. Even now, years later, the gunplay feels amazing, and the control you have over Max leads to the most hectic, explosive, over-the-top shootouts this side of John Woo's Stranglehold. Now that's a reference I bet you didn't expect in this video.
I don't expect anything from you.
What's overlooked as well, tragically, is that it shipped with a surprisingly great multiplayer suite, which managed to somehow nail the bullet time effect in an online space. Now, imagine that.
And number 1, Fallout New Vegas. Excluding the outstanding isometric games, New Vegas is arguably the best title in the Fallout franchise, and it's one that Bethesda has almost been guiltily pushing for the last few years as a must-play game in their library. Now, why do I say guilty? Well, Bethesda had no part in it. Obsidian did. Obsidian did start on the right foot, though, with Fallout 3 commanding a huge swathe of critical and public praise, and so the framework, graphics, engine, and technical data was at their disposal, but this afforded the development team the ability to focus all their efforts into creating a rich and vibrant world complete with dense characters and a charming plot about a courier being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, what I absolutely love about this game is actually the character of the courier. They're pretty much the only Fallout protagonist that I accept as being able to walk across the wasteland and not be constantly freaking out at using caps for currency or facing giant scorpions. I mean, don't you find it a bit odd that Johnny Vault Dweller just pops out and immediately gets to grips with all the changed laws of the world? It doesn't make any sense. At least here, it's more believable, and New Vegas is a bloody good game to boot. No wonder people are looking at The Outer Worlds, Obsidian, and Private Division's next game with such eager eyes. Oh, daddy. And there we go, those were 8 video game sequels not made by the original developers that were still bloody amazing. Let us know what you think about it down in the comments section below. Josh, thank you so much for joining me on this list. Do you have anything to add from that brilliant brain of yours?
No, thank you, Jules. I'm just here to look good, which doesn't work because I am a voice.
Yeah.
And I've just realised what I've said there.
But if people wanted to see you, where could they follow you to find your beautiful pictures?
They can follow me at Josh Broom with 2 O's over on Twitter.com. Thank you very much. This has been lovely as always.
Oh, he's giving me a little smooch. That was lovely. I enjoyed that. And if you want to go see my bald head in real life, you can go follow me at RetroJ with a 0. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.